Welcome to Sponsored Posts, behind the lens of how influential content is made. I am Justin Moore. I'm the founder and CEO of Trending Family, which is an influencer marketing agency that launches campaigns with family-friendly influencers. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Eamon Brennan, who is the creative director of branded content at Collab. He has extensive experience in launching influencer marketing campaigns throughout his career, including at Fullscreen. Today, we're going to talk about the turf war in influencer marketing. Who should really own it? Is it PR agencies? Is it the brand team? Is it media agencies, multi-channel networks? Where do influencer agencies or platforms fit into all this? Welcome to the podcast, Eamon.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's great. And so why don't we just kick it off by talking about the history of the ecosystem as you see it? Maybe you could start with, how things have evolved since perhaps your days at Fullscreen.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you pointed out, before I came on board to run branded content here at Collab, I was over at Fullscreen, which, for those who are unfamiliar, is a multi-channel network that, at least in its early days, was very, very focused on size, aggregating as many channels as possible. So while I was doing integrated marketing over there, I was overseeing campaigns for, we're talking about 500,000 channels in the network. So there's a lot going on there. At the time, and this is 6 or 7 years ago, the influencer marketing space looked very, very different. There were fewer of the typical players involved at that time, and most of the actual influencer marketing campaigns were being generated as part of larger overall media buys. Since then, with the growth of Instagram and more vertical video platforms, what we've seen with influencer marketing is it's no longer necessarily bucketed into a much larger spend. It's often, one-off engagements on single platforms or across multiple platforms. It's not the sort of blue chip, 6-figure and above only type of space that it used to be.
That's so fascinating. So were PR and media agencies, how interested were they in getting involved in these deals in those early days?
I think in the early days, the idea that a content creator could really drive a lot of viewership and engagement on non-long form. It's funny to call YouTube a long form platform, but when you compare it to the world of Vine and Snapchat and so on, it really is. I didn't have the experience that PR agencies were really taking us seriously at that time. It seemed that the only way that you could really look at YouTube creators and determine ROI was through, spending across YouTube media inventory. So if you're familiar with TrueView or any of the, ad units that run before monetized videos on YouTube, you'll know that it varies who the brands are who are part of it, but oftentimes you see the more premium, giant brands doing that. And the initial influencer marketing that existed were campaigns that were tied to these overall larger media buys. So it was media companies were sort of doing the first influencer marketing bits because, frankly, they were the only folks who could afford it. I think over time, and particularly as the social content stars began to rise, folks started to realize that, quote unquote, influencer content falls into a communications bucket. So you started to see a lot more PR agencies get involved in this type of work, which I just don't think they realized was even going to be part of their purview at the onset. So things have changed a little bit, but there's still no one single place that these types of deals are coming from.
No, and that actually leads really well into kind of the next question, which is just kind of talking about what the ecosystem looks like today. And all of these different players, we've seen are now trying seemingly to own a piece of the pie, right? Everyone either wants to be the champion of kind of leading the campaign and the ideation and the, owning the creative services and the campaign management and all that stuff, or they at least want to be involved. So should there be someone who owns it, like one entity that runs point and everyone else should kind of defer to that player? I mean, maybe we could talk in the lens of like a larger company who has all of these players, like an ad agency, a PR agency, all this stuff. So what are your thoughts on whether there should be someone primary leading the charge?
That's a great question. And I think that the key word in there is that word should. It would be great if one hand knew what the other was doing at all times. But, the industry just doesn't look like that right now. So I've had experience with working with very large brands who have both influencer leads in-house. They have a gigantic media company who looks at influencers as part of their mix. They've got a PR agency involved. And then, and that's sort of the core. There'll also be a creative agency, but in my experience, creative agencies sort of don't really work in this space quite so much. Then what ends up happening is whoever is taking point on that, it's very hard to say whether the other agencies involved even know. There's not often communication from the top down. So you might have a PR agency that could be a boutique PR agency, not necessarily located in a major market, who are still running influencer activations under a larger umbrella activation that might be coming from a large media company. And it all kind of works together. It'd be great to see just one group own it, and who that group is, I think, is certainly up for debate. But it's just not looking that way right now. And there's probably quite a few reasons for that. The number one thing being just an issue of bandwidth, because it takes a lot of work to do this kind of thing. So they spread the work around. I couldn't really say who should own it the most. I think a lot of that has to come with, goals. I think when you're working with influencers who are trying to spin a certain brand message, that falls very much into PR. And then when you're looking at influencers who are supporting a specific campaign that's maybe more cohesive into what you're seeing in traditional media or what you might see in billboards, other different types of ad spends, you might see that come out of the media agency just to keep things looking a little bit more uniform. So it really varies. I wish I had a stronger answer for you.
Yeah, no. I to be honest, I mean, I think that's just, you're right. It's the state of the industry right now, and it's everyone is still kind of jostling for position. I think, is there anyone any players who you think shouldn't be touching influencer marketing, who are just kind of getting involved because, if you look at the state of agencies in general, right? I mean, everyone is transitioning. A lot of people are transitioning to project work. There's not as many AORs to go around, so they're looking around and saying, okay, well, where can we win more business, right? And influencer marketing, of course, has been and continues to be a very hot area for a lot. So do you think that there's players out there who are getting involved that shouldn't be?
My thought on who might be muddying things up a little bit is these traditional agents and stuff. They're out there to represent a roster of talent. And when talent signs with an agent, they expect to be the agent's, primary concern. That agent is out there to secure work and secure the best deals possible for their talent. Where things get conflicted is when you start seeing packages go out under the guise of marketing. If you have a talent agent that is attempting to help a brand out by getting involved in influencer marketing, I think most of us sort of see between the lines and know that, okay, if you have this person whose sole job is to secure the best deal and to fill the talent and the agency's pockets with as much money as possible, I find it really hard to swallow that they've got the brand's best interest in mind too. So from a influencer marketing, purely the definition of the word marketing perspective, I do think that with the major talent agencies involved, what you're starting to see is a much, much stickier, messier place, because now brands don't know who to talk to and who is of pure intention.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably made even more complicated by the recent influx of traditional celebrity talent starting to have a more diverse digital presence, right? I mean, these are folks who have, who have had traditional agency representation, and then now they've got a YouTube channel, or they've got, big names like Jack Black, Will Smith, Adrian Bailon, a lot of people, right? And so let's run with this for a second. So let's pretend I'm a major food company, okay, a CPG company, let's say, wanting to get into the influencer marketing space, but really hasn't done that much yet. So let's lay out the space for me about how they should navigate it. Because you mentioned, right, it's very confusing. They don't know who to go to. They don't know, let's say they get excited about an influencer that they see on Instagram or YouTube or something. Why don't we talk about each of the key players and what you think they're good for or what they're maybe not so good for? So why don't we start it off and talk about multi-channel networks? Because as you mentioned, some of them are perhaps on the way out. I mean, you look at, let's say, Maker getting absorbed into Disney not so long ago. And then, this model of kind of collecting tens of thousands of channels, that model may be on the way out. But there are still some players out there who are finding success with this model. So what do you think is the value of a multi-channel network for a brand who's just wanting to get into influencer marketing?
That's a great question. The number one thing a brand looking to get into influencer marketing needs to sort of have a clear understanding on is their own goals. So as we start to go through, this list, we're assuming that the client knows what they want, or they have some set of KPIs, key performance indicators, or some overall goal they're trying to hit. So when we look at multi-channel network, the multi-channel network's role is a lot more for the creator than it would be for a specific brand. So as a creator, when you join a multi-channel network, what you're signing up for is, or should be, support, access to premium CPMs, tier of ad units that you may not have access to as an individual creator. But when you group yourself into this larger group of creators, that overall reach sort of opens up opportunities for more premium advertising on YouTube. So as it functions, it's supposed to be for the creator. Now, how it works for brands are lots of MCNs have a team that works with brands to help them get the best use out of that MCN's talent pool. Then you have others who sort of go above and beyond that. I'm proud to work at Collab, where when we're working with a brand client, while we love making sure that our talent comes in on the top of the list on everything we pitch, my client is the brand itself. I want them to get what they want, even if that's not something that I happen to have in my pocket. And, you and I are not affiliated directly in any kind of MCN deal, but we've had the opportunity to work together with that very thing in mind. So in terms of MCNs, I think that it's great for brands to have discussions with these groups, feel them out as if they're any other agency, but MCN's primary value is going to come in what it can give to the creator. Example tools would be anything from very visible monetization tracking, dashboards, etc., access to tools like sound libraries, royalty-free music, production support, asset protection, and of course, access to brand deals. So a multi-channel network, however, may get its deals from a different type of agency. There's everyone from the creative agencies like 72 and Sunny on through the Ogilvies of the world, the sort of ad agencies that you might think of from the Mad Men days, An MCN might receive an RFP, a request for proposal, from this group. So an MCN as an agency oftentimes are already sitting as a middleman somewhere. These agencies of record might have the idea to do an influencer program by themselves, or it might come from another agency even higher up, or it might come from the brand directly. So I think you've really hit the nail on the head here about how murky and sort of, it almost looks like a circulatory system and all the different ways a deal can come from. The origins of my work come from a lot of PR agencies. As I mentioned, particularly as more shorter form content became popular, PR agencies got more involved, understanding that, okay, these influencers are communicating a certain message. We're going to look at this as if it was any other piece of publicity. So we'll often get requests in from PR agencies who have really sort of specific focus and look at things more how I think creators look at them, which is an endorsement. You know, when you're doing a branded program, yes, you're trying to work into a campaign or you're trying to help the brand get their message out, but you as an individual are putting your brand on the line as well. So really what you're doing is endorsing something. And I think PR agencies get that a lot better than media focused agencies might, because they're sort of, you know, a lot of PR agencies also represent celebrities who have to do endorsement deals all the time. So I think there's a certain like-mindedness that comes from PR agencies. They're sort of my favorite to work with beyond working with a brand directly.
Do you find, though, that PR agencies are saddled with this kind of legacy mindset around earned media versus paid, you know, and that being their main purview is to try to secure media mentions without directly compensating the creators?
It's certainly a tool in their toolbox. You know, I think, yes, that they're looking to maximize what they can get in overall viewership, overall engagement for sort of the minimum investment. But, you know, that's the name of the game in so many industries. You will see more for product or for free stuff come from PR agencies than you will any other type of agency. And that's just, you know, sort of their occupational hazard. Not every brand has the budget necessary to bring in influencers of a certain caliber. So yeah, you're going to get a little bit of that. Of course, that's, you know, to each creator. I've had creators who have very, very high rates, but will take unpaid programs for something like Coachella. It makes things very, very difficult, you know, because those tickets are $500 a pop or something.
So to that point, like, do you have clients at Collab where you will do kind of earned and unpaid consultation or like assist them with unpaid work for different talent in the guise of a broader partnership where maybe they are doing some other paid things, but you're just kind of helping them on this other? Because I mean, honestly, any brand worth their salt has multiple strategies, right? There's going to be a paid strategy. There's going to be an earned strategy, product seeding, like, you know, of course that should be part of the overall mix. But do you think it's the role of like an MCN or other entities to do all those different types of things?
Whether or not it should be the role, I think by default, it sometimes is. Ultimately, what you're looking for is value, and revenue and value aren't always the same thing. Collab's mantra, it's sort of our slogan that's right there up on our website, collab.inc, INC, by the way, is AdWib. Always do what is best for creators. So as talent managers and as marketers here, we try very, very hard to make sure whatever we're doing is best for the creator. Now, who defines that best really, really affects things, because look, I had a creator who wanted to travel this year. That was his number one goal. And while he was often getting programs at very, very high rates, an opportunity came in at a much lower rate, but it allowed him sort of first class travel tropically. And he wanted it and wouldn't listen to a word I said about rate. You know, my responsibility there is to do what's best for him. So even though, you know, it doesn't help us keep the lights on, I have a duty to, you know, to take care of that. We do have opportunities where a client will spend revenue with us in a certain place, and we sort of look at, all of the tools we have to see if we can support them and do something that may bring them value, but might not necessarily put cash in anyone's pockets. The thing is, we only bring that out if it makes sense for talent, and we never hold talent to, hey, you have to do this. We never ask somebody to do something for nothing. I know I've brought you interesting opportunities where I'm like, hey, this might not be what you're looking for financially, but I thought of you when I saw this, so it's up to you.
This industry is everyone knows everyone eventually, it seems like, and so, it's this kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing. I've definitely, over our 10 years in the space, I've definitely seen that kind of mentality and open-mindedness goes a long way. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we transition over to an independent influencer agency? So at Trending Family, we would consider ourselves that. So where do you see the role of a player like that?
I think for every job, there is the right tool. And when you look at independent influencer agencies, you look at it almost like a specialized consultant. You may have come as far as, okay, I think I'd like to work with influencers, but I don't know who I want to work with. I don't know what data I should be looking at. I don't know about any of that stuff. Well, you wouldn't bring your Ferrari to Jiffy Lube necessarily. You'd bring it to a specialized mechanic. This is where I see the function of independent influencer agencies. Now, not all of them are the same. And, I think I've heard many of these folks sort of work on what we call upfront deals, where they might make a deal with a certain talent that says, if I spend a certain number with you across a year, it will bring down the cost per post on each individual thing. And I see a lot of, these independent influencer agencies doing that. And again, every single one is different. But what I'm getting at is, I think intention and sort of POV is most important. Independent influencer agencies are more often than not just trying to help their client out, which, I really admire. They're not necessarily held to pitching specific talent or working with only certain people. So to me, it's a great tool. I think, where things get messy is because these independent influencer agencies don't represent talent necessarily, pending who that brand is talking to at a given moment, you might see the same talent pop up on several different people's pitches. And for a brand unfamiliar with the space, they might not know what to do with that information. I read an article last year where one of the major MCN's CEOs was going crazy because he was losing pitches to his own talent because these independent influencer agencies were undercutting him and then, paying out lower fees. So they're great value for a brand, but in terms of the influencer representation mess, it can be a little strange to folks who don't really understand the space.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid. And I think another thing that complicates that is that because there are so many players in the space, deals are coming to influencers from so many different types of representatives, And so I think that, like you mentioned at the top about how a lot of more traditional talent are, starting to making digital content as well. Creators really, money is green to them, right? It really doesn't matter where it comes from. And so I think that this idea of like being saddled to one person who represents them is not that appealing, right? Because they want to be able to have the connection with whoever really wants to work with them. I think the other kind of value proposition that that we talk about with our clients is that, like you mentioned, it's a very specialized tool where the analogy we give is that a lot of more traditional brands have experience working with, let's say, traditional bloggers, right? It's pretty easy to change out photos or text or, in a blog post, right? But especially when you want to start working with video, that somehow is a little bit scarier, right? So it definitely is helpful to have advocates for your brand to be able to say, look, these are best practices in the space, especially for Trending Family, where we focus on family and kids and just family-friendly content in general. I think that you're right. For those players who really want to make sure to do it right, it can be very helpful. But yeah, I don't see the issue in terms of murkiness, in terms of who represent who, all that kind of stuff going away anytime soon, as long as creators want to be looking out for their own interests and willing to partner with whoever brings them business,
It's very much an open market.
So we're going to pause our conversation with Eamon Brennan right here. He's the creative director of branded content at Collab, and we're going to pick this up next episode. You've just listened to the Sponsored Post podcast with your host, Justin Moore. You can subscribe to hear more great interviews and episodes via iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Trending Family, you can visit www.trendingfamily.com. See you next time.